YouTube. Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 136. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We are currently it is currently, the 12th of the 10th in the year of our Lord 2022. Oh, yes. YouTube is playing in the background here. I'm hearing myself doubling up. All right. Tonight is Wednesday night, hump day, middle of the week. The middle of the week was carded and allotted for our sister island because, you see, here in Trinidad and Tobago, we exist in a twin island republic. And never should we be forgetting our twin isle. It's not just Trinidad. Oh, nobody care about men. It's not just Trinidad. It's Trinidad and Tobago. So we're here to talk about Tobago issues. Oh, all of the O's. Yes. Now, I wasn't here for a while. So when I'm talking about Tobago issues, I am talking all the way going back about a month into the Tobago issues. And if you go back a month into Tobago issues, most of us would be very much aware where that would be putting us. And the reason I had some ideas and some thoughts about the similarities between this and the French Revolution. I like history. I'm a student of history. I enjoy history. Now, to be honest, I never liked history much in school, like being taught the subject itself. But history itself, in terms of learning about history, I enjoy. That's a strange dichotomy. A lot of things in terms of the schooling side of it, like if you were to sit me down in a classroom and teach me this, I didn't used to like them. I mean, I was good at some, I was good at many, but I didn't used to like it. But the knowledge itself, like the information itself, if you present it to me otherwise, I find it so interesting and it's nearly like I can't get enough of it. And I think some of that has to do with the very nature of how schooling occurs, of how education goes on. And this is the perfect segue into mindful education, which this program is being brought to you by right now. We have launched our pod learning classes, and that is the exact idea of our pod learning classes. Now, this is something that is, as it were, a bit dear to me because during my schooling years, I was always generally well performing, but I didn't enjoy school that much. I enjoyed learning. I still enjoy learning. I enjoy knowledge, but schooling, the structured schooling system, I didn't enjoy it that much. And I found that the style of teaching wasn't conducive to making people enjoy learning. And I think learning is an enjoyable thing. Human beings, us people are naturally curious. We are naturally curious. We like learning. You look at any child that hasn't been scarred by bad teaching or bad education yet, they enjoy learning. They're always on the search for something new, for some kind of new information to add to their repertoire. They're just hunting that. Nathan, for education minister, I don't know about that. If I was education minister, I might privatize the whole thing. Anyway, well, not the whole thing, but a lot of it. Anyway, so that's what we're offering with Mindful Education, Mindful_education over there on Instagram. If you are interested, go over there and follow us. The contact information is there if you are interested in registering. That's what we're offering. By the way, these are not online classes. Some people were asking me about that. No, it's not online classes. If you are interested in online classes, there is a Springer that can offer you those. Not this spring. My classes are in-person classes. That's the intent I am going for, to get as much of that face-to-face time with the students as possible, get them to actually enjoy and pull themselves through curiosity into learning more and more and more. Naomi Tischel says, I nearly flunked out. Luckily, chickenpox had me at home learning better to pass on average. Wow, you see, that's kind of the point I'm making, where so many people recognize if you're at home and you have somebody to pay attention and help you to learn at home, or you have the drive to learn at home by yourself, nearly everyone learns better. And the style of teaching we're using is homeschooled homeschool style teaching, where your aim isn't to make this feel like you're in a classroom. That's not the aim. This isn't lessons. This isn't after school lessons where it's just school 2.0. That's not the aim. The aim is not to feel that feeling. The aim is for us all to come, and as it were, we're conversing as master to apprentice kind of thing, master to students, conversing in the original intent of education, sharing that information. Anyway, that's mindful education. If you are so interested, head over to Instagram and you can feel free to follow us there and register if you feel so inclined to do. We're offering, by the way, these classes are from preschool students right up to CXC. So tune in, jump in. All right, going over to Tobago and their bacchanal. Dumas. Is this the first one? Wait. Bago bacchanal. Sorry. Finally removed as PDP deputy political leader. Leader of the Progressive Democratic Patriots and Deputy Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Watson Duke, has announced the revocation of THA Chief Secretary Fali Augustine and fellow PDP member Faith B. Israel and Alicia Roberts Patterson as PDP deputy political leaders. All right, so this was the bit of bacchanal that reared its head. Was this September? Was this during September, mid-September, somewhere there? And I was saying this had some relevance to me and the French Revolution, because let's go through the French Revolution a bit, right? As I was saying, I enjoy history. I like history. The French Revolution, the king and queen, this royal family, the monarchy, they weren't treating the French people well. You know, they were broke. The French country, France as a country, and bear in mind, France had a long-lasting monarchy. I believe the monarch in France could have trailed or tracked themselves straight back to Charlemagne the Great. So, yeah, they had that monarchy in place for a long time. But France at that point in time was broke. There were quite a few things going on all around the world. The American Revolution just happened. France chose the American side, helped them with some money. America wasn't giving them back any money right now, so France was broke. These regular peasants in the society, and the nature of how those feudal societies run. You have the lords of the land. They are the landowners, and you are supposed to be working on the land, and you know they're supposed to be taking care of you. It's supposed to have a bit of give and take inside of this, but there was way more taking than giving on the side of the monarchy, and people were getting angry. All right, so eventually the people in France during that time, there was a blossoming of Enlightenment era ideas. What was this guy's name? Rousseau, etc. And they started thinking about these things as man being an individual or having these more rights than we are seeing right now. So they envisioned a different society, which is a good thing in and of itself. A lot of the discussions that happened in that 18th century France have a lot to do with some of the liberal benefits we have right now. So yeah, some of it was good. But in that discussion, two men that grew up together, I believe both of them were lawyers back then. Then one Mr. Robespierre and one Mr. Danton. Both of them were really good friends. Some might even call them best friends, men of the people. And they were inside the committees that were in charge of this revolution occurring. Danton, Robespierre, they were the big names inside of this committee. Eventually, when the revolution occurred, they deposed the monarchy. At some point in time, I believe it was like 4 years down the road from the revolution taking over, they recognized, hey, and Robespierre himself said this quote, that the king must die in order for the Roma, as in the football team. The king must die in order for the revolution to live. You see, one of the things about revolution is if I come to power with the basis being those that aren't ruling in the correct manner should be thrown out of power. What happens is I start to get worried, very worried, about other people wanting to throw me out of power too. It's the same way I came in, so I start to get very worried about this. So that's why many revolutionary leaders, if you look at them from Robespierre right up to Lenin and Stalin and Mao and Hitler himself and Chavez and Castro and Maduro and the Ayatollah, nearly all authoritarian leaders, one of the things they really need to do is make sure that no one is trying to push them out of their place. So that becomes very important to their mind. Mr. Robespierre decided that he was going to kill the king. Bam, they killed the king, chop off his head. And back then, they were like, you know what? We don't want cruel killing. Yeah, because they were men of the people. This was the people's revolution. Well, good. I see what you did there, Mr. Positive Radiation. These are men of the people. So they were looking for more humane ways to carry about the killing that they were doing. And one Mr. Guillotine, however you pronounce that, I forgot his first name, but his surname was Guillotine. And if his surname was Guillotine, I believe you could guess what was the gift he gave to the world. He gave to the world the macabre death instrument called the guillotine, a sharpened, heavy blade attached to what you would call that, nearly like a slide system. You pull it up, the person puts their head through, the blade falls, zhang, and head rolls into a basket. Easy like that. And lots of heads began rolling in France. Robespierre and Danton really got up to it. They were out there getting their numbers up. What they call that period, something like the rule of terror or something like that. It was a terrible time, really terrible. Now, strange enough, about 4 years into all of this, but the blades were dull, tough, ouch. Ugh. But about 4 years into all of this, Robespierre recognized, you know what? I think Danton, I believe Danton may not be fully on my side. So you know what Mr. Robespierre did to his longtime buddy, Mr. Danton? These two men of the people that went out there and had a revolution for the people. Within 4 years of them getting to power. Do you know what Mr. Robespierre did to Mr. Danton? Can you guess? I mean, it's not really a hard guess because we're talking about the guillotines and how many heads rolled. So, yeah, just what you think, yeah, that's what he did. He got his good partner, his good friend, he got him decapitated. Chappy again. Quite true. That's a good way to phrase it, Naomi Tishel. Chappy, precisely chappy. But, as history would have it, you know, history, you don't need to go and look for the fantastic books to tell you some interesting stories. History is full of them. So it was around, I think it could have been like March, it could have been when he beheaded Mr. Danton. And then March, April, May, June, I think it could have been around July, 4 months later. So they functioned on a committee. It's a committee doing all of this. But you know, there would be people at the head of the committee. Mr. Robespierre was at the top of the committee. So members on the committee started, you know, they started to figure things like, listen, if Comrade Ruby, if he could behead his best friend, what do you think is we chances, fellas? The committee started, you know, doing a little 1 + 1 = 2. They started trying to, you know, figure some stuff out here. And they figured, hey, I think Mr. Robespierre may want et tu, Brutus. I think Mr. Robespierre may want our next two. So they figured, well, it's a kill or be killed kind of thing. And the strange thing is, they were right. Robespierre was gunning for their necks. But when he went to the committee to vote to chop off someone else's head, they decided, well, here's what. Who is for Mr. Robespierre losing his neck instead today? We all in favor of going chappy on Mr. Robespierre, say aye. And what would you know, as the fates would have it, the ayes had it. And about 4 months later, from cutting off his good friend Danton's head, the same fate befell Mr. Robespierre. And I think Danton had some final words that were kind of prophetic in that nature, where I think they told him he told Robespierre something to the effect that the same basket in which my head is going to lay, not long from now yours is going to be there too. And he was right. Yes, he was right. So Robespierre's head rolled too. And looking at the bacchanal that happened in Tobago, that's what I could have remembered. Thank God, thank goodness, no one is actually taking off anyone's head here. But the idea of the manner in which many of the people that sometimes work for the people or come into things in a revolutionary manner working for the people, oftentimes they don't last unified. You see, there's a problem. The good book has a verse, a quote that says, "Can two walk together unless they be agreed?" People cannot work together if they are not in agreement. The idea that many people join forces in politics with, especially the kind of revolutionary politics, is an idea that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let's make alliances against our common enemies. But the problem with that is you can conquer your common enemy by making those alliances. But then when the alliances reach in the position of leadership, you cannot rule based on a common enemy. You have to rule based on common ideals. And if all we had was a common enemy without the common ideals, when it's time to rule, we could agree on who we still hate, but we cannot agree on how to rule, the manner in which we rule. And this is something very often, a problem very often you see pops up with that whole amalgamation in pursuit of revolution kind of thing. Even in the 2010-2015 era, when the partnership came into power, they were a partnership. They were an alliance. But very quickly into the alliance, you saw fractures forming. Same reason. Yes, you all hate PNM. Grand. You can come around the campfire and sing the anti-PNM songs. But when you actually get the reins of power, hating PNM no longer becomes a viable strategy. You need something a little more than just hating PNM. So that's the way I see some of this, and why I figured a lot of this seemed to some extent unavoidable. It seems like this was the end that was going to come of it anyway. When you look at even the backstory, I find the backstory to a lot of this when I was listening to this, because I'm listening this all while I'm up and down in the hospital, out of the hospital, seeing about this, buying that, and I'm taking in this, trying to, make sure I'm keeping up with the news and following all of the developing stories as they develop. And I'm listening and I'm like, something really isn't adding up here. These people are supposed to be going to a festival. They're supposed to be going there to perform, and they have no money. What is happening here? Dumas Morris probe THA 400,000 funding of folk group. Former head of the Public Service Reginald Dumas is calling for a thorough and impartial investigation into the Tobago House of Assembly's $400,417.15 part sponsorship of the Roxborough folk performance trip to New York for Labor Day celebrations. He slammed the Assembly's treatment. Well, this was Watson Duke who slammed the Assembly's treatment of them and was asking for more resources, etc. Dumas said the Chief Secretary has questions to answer. He speaks of $400,000 to assist people with airfare. How much does it cost for a round-trip airfare between Scarborough and New York for 27 people? $400,000? I don't think so. And I've seen many people ask about this. What was the cost of this whole thing? Mr. Duke brought this to the public eye, and I don't think he fully calculated what the ramifications of this was going to be. By bringing this to the public eye, you raised more questions about the entire thing than anything you solved in trying to help these people. What was this $400,000 for? And then, to make this whole thing so much more complicated, the members of the Roxborough folk team said that they got no money. So how could the people that were supposed to be getting the sponsorship say they got no money, but $400,000 left for them? So who got the $400,000? I think there really are questions to be answered here, and I don't think that Mr. Duke, this worked out exactly how he foresaw it working out. I've been reading, or I was trying to read, as many of the interviews from members of the Roxborough community as I can, and when you see a lot of these interviews, the statements are repeated. It's the same thing. I do not think Mr. Duke had the positive showing inside of this. People don't look at this and see, yes, that's good, that was well done by him. No, I don't think they see that. They see this looking like bacchanal. And if you look at the first video, and I believe Mr. Farley Augustine basically admitted that it was kind of a blackmail kind of thing, kind of an extortion thing. He sent that video and threatened that if you don't do exactly as I say, I am going to release this video to the public. But in releasing that video to the public, you brought all of the dirty linen out in the public, and now people are watching you and thinking, well, is that the best decision in governance? Is that how governance works? These two people are in the same party, and you're lambasting each other. Well, one is lambasting the other on social media for the entire world to see. And being that this is a Tobago thing, these are Tobagonians, they're dealing with Tobago issues. They came up in a Tobago party. The party focused and pushed Tobago mindset kind of thinking. All right. But then you must understand, when you do things like this, the bad light that it's going to shine is going to shine directly on Tobago. I don't think I saw one resident, at least in the interviews I saw so far, speaking positively to Mr. Duke's end. Duke erred in removing Farley to get top THA position, says ex-Chief Secretary Ho Choi Charles. So, the ex-Chief Secretary basically gave a breakdown of what he thinks was happening there. He thinks that Mr. Duke made a mistake in the law. He made a mistake in the law. He thought that the law was similar to Trinidad's law, because in Trinidad's law, if you as an MP are fired or removed from a party, then you lose your position. Good evening, Scafty. Then you lose your position. So maybe Mr. Duke thought when he fired them from their roles inside of the PDP that would have removed them from that position. However, Tobago House of Assembly has different rules. They have different laws. They aren't governed by the same laws as as the national parliament. So whether you remove them from a party or not, they're still in the same position. The only thing that is able to remove them is at least the chief secretary is a vote of no confidence. And the chief secretary has been daring Mr. Duke to do just that. You go file a vote of no confidence. You go file that motion of no confidence there. And I think he's aware that Mr. Duke would not want to do that. You see, the PDP party in the first place isn't a party where every member inside of the PDP is organically PDP and has a lot of loyalty to the PDP. A lot of the PDP party is running on the corpses of all the other former Tobago opposition parties. The Tobago Forwards, the TOP, all of those parties are existing in some kind of way inside of the PDP. The part of the proof of that is I remember one individual currently inside of the PDP during the House elections. He was out there saying, quoting Bible, Empress, you're late for the exact live you were supposed to be here early for, Empress. Anyway, good night. One of the members of the PDP right now, I recall back in the House election times, he was out there saying we must stand by Duke by any means, by all means, we must stand by the leader. He quoted Bible, I believe, something about smite the shepherd. Good night, Chris 868. Smite the shepherd and the sheep would be scattered or something to that effect. And he was there backing Duke 100%. Now, when it seems like there may be some friction going on inside of the party, he is literally singing a different tune. He is singing songs for Mr. Farley now. And you see, that would happen in a party like the PDP because lots of the members inside there don't have loyalty to the PDP. They have loyalty to getting into power. Many of these individuals have been attempting for quite some time to get into power. Good night, Alfonso James. They've just found now a vehicle that was capable of carrying them into that power. So now, in your vehicle, you carried them into power, but remember, they aren't loyal to your vehicle per se. So if you're starting to look like you're going to grab hold of your vehicle by tight authoritarian reins, they will leave you. So that vote of no confidence, I don't think he's going to win that. I think more of those members are going to stick with Mr. Farley. That's what I think. And then also, you do not want to make an avenue where it may have a chance of even calling another election, because right now, the way the PDP stands right now, if another election is called in Tobago, I highly doubt they're going to win again. I will not be surprised if an election were to be called right now if the PDP may not win one seat. So that vote of no confidence that Mr. Farley is daring Mr. Duke to launch at him, I think he is doing that because he is very much aware that he is not going to do it because it isn't in his benefit. But inside of this, Mr. Augustine opened up about the matter. He explained that the group asked for over $700,000. The group asked for over $700,000. Now, what was this group doing that they required nearly $30,000 per person? What were they doing? Is that the regular cost when dance troops go away? Is that the regular cost? That's nearly $30,000 per person if you're checking at that 27 people basis. Did they need all of that money to go to perform in the United States? That does not seem to be adding up right, does it? Anyone else who has ever gone on trips away? What kind of trip costs you $30,000 per person? Action Jackson. I wouldn't doubt that Action Jackson may be taking in the live somewhere, because I was taking in a bit of a, I take in a lot of news all about the place. Dubai cost that. All right. Well, maybe they were heading to Dubai. And I was taking in one of those calling talk shows, and they were talking about that very same issue. And what would you know, Action Jackson was there taking in, and she called in. That's good work. Always on the spot they're working. Given financial constraints, Augustine, it was agreed, the THA would pay for the airfare, which amounted to over $300,000. However, he said one day after the group arrived in New York, he got a call indicating they had nowhere to stay. So, over $700,000 for the trip, and the airfare alone is $300,000. Were these people traveling in first class? Were they chartering private jets out there? What regular ticket costs 27 people $300,000? And as someone said, although Mr. Augustine inside of this could look kind of good, because you know he isn't just legoing all the purse strings, but he did pay out some $300,000. So a question could be asked: what proof did he see to make this $300,000 be a worthwhile payout? What was the proof he saw that? Go ahead, Shaquille Springer. What was the proof he saw that made him think, yes, $300,000 is worth it? Nathan is shopping, leading the trip. What can you expect? You know names, sir. You know names. You know names. But yes, I recall that. And I was seeing in some news, they were saying that some residents of Roxborough were alleging that some of the members of the team weren't even from Roxborough. Some of the members of the team weren't even from Roxborough. And this thing all ended up eventually. I don't know how this is going to turn out ultimately, but Farley to sue Duke. Tobago House of Assembly Chief Secretary Farley Augustine will be taking legal action against his political leader, Watson Duke, for allegations made against him. So, we'll see if this all ends up in court. What's the benefits of the trip? That's the real question. Well, they might say the benefits of the trip is to spread culture. But part of the weird thing in all of this is the trip was supposed to be for Tobago Day. They're going for Tobago Day to perform in the States. But they arrived in the United States after Tobago Day was finished. I don't know what to say on that. The maths just not matching. The maths not matching. The THA has a history of funding other types of trips. Well, as I saw Mr. Dumas say in one of the articles, the thing is, many of the people aren't saying that you don't fund a trip. They aren't saying that someone can't come and request. Let me pull up that. And Mr. Dumas, he is a PNM old boy. He is a PNM old faithful, but he was, I believe, the head of the public service. So he knows the manner in which a lot of these things are done. At least you will know that. I am not saying, this is Mr. Dumas who is speaking here. I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to the THA and ask for assistance for this, that, and the other. Yes, they can do that. But on what basis is that assistance to be given? If it is to be given, at all. And that's the question here. The question is that there are so many questions surrounding this. People would like to know, what was it for? And it's not like it was $10,000. It was a lot of money. And they were requesting more than that. So what was the reasoning for it? What was the procedure that they went through for it? Because they aren't the only people that would be requesting money from the government or from the THA, the Tobago House of Assembly. Nearly anybody in Tobago might want to request money for some reason. And people would want to know, what is the correct procedure to go through and to go about to get this request going through? And it shouldn't have to be, people wouldn't want it to be that the procedure, the proper procedure is to know somebody inside of the party. That's not good governance. That's not good governance in a free republic as we are supposed to be. The idea is that if the government does allow giving money for people to go on trips as this, then there must be a procedure that any person has an equal access to trying to get to. But if the procedure is, I need to know somebody in the party and they would link it for me, that's not good governance. Shakil asks, how does a common citizen who has witnessed unethical behavior by a senior public official speak or seek? Sir, I am not sure. You are supposed to be able to go to the police. That's who you're supposed to be able to go to. But we know that some police may be involved in some unsavory activities in and of themselves, and some of these things may be dangerous. I believe our current government is speaking much talk about their whistleblower legislation and creating the facilities to allow for whistleblowing. Maybe when that law is sorted out and proclaimed, there would be a clear path for you to go through. I go in France and they better feed and house me. That's the thing, that's the same thing I was wondering, like, what kind of planning is this? Can I just jump out myself, run out to Mexico, and then call in Trinidad and say, hey folks, out of money, send a couple $100,000 for me in Mexico? Like, I heard the Action Jackson, the current PDP, what she is, the general, I'm not sure her position, but she's high up in there right now. I believe she is a new deputy political leader also. I heard her saying that we are never supposed to leave any resident behind, or something to that effect. Anyone out there asking for help, we must help. And I could understand the sentiment of a statement like that, but the reality of a statement like that is insane. That's not how the country goes. Nathan, do you know if there were internal battles before? Well, there are allegations that there were internal battles long before. The Tobago heavy ruler, as some call him, Mr. Hotroy Charles, said that, let me see if I could pull up the way he phrased this. He said that all right. Tobago voted for Farley, not Duke. This is Mr. Hotroy Charles speaking here. Asked about the extent of Duke's support, Charles said, it was not accidental that the PDP political leader Duke allowed Farley to become chief secretary. Mr. Duke, leading a political party in Tobago, could not have won that election, and he knew that. And that is why very early he said that Farley would be the chief secretary, because people were not going to vote for Mr. Duke. PDP could not win the election if Duke was leading it and offering himself for chief secretary. So he sent the deputy political leader to win. And now that the objective has been achieved, this conflict has been brought to the fore. It has nothing to do with what happened in America. This is what Mr. Hotroy Charles is saying. On Independence Day, when Farley walked on that red carpet, Go and look at the tape and look at Mr. Duke's face. When Farley walked down and took the salute, Duke said to himself, nah man, he couldn't take that. Charles said, I know the problem. He, Duke, can't take that. He must be the big man. So that is what happened here. And after that, he started to cuss the administrator and everyone. So that issue of those people going up to New York and not getting food and so on is not the issue. He said, Duke, make a move to take over, and he now realizing that he can't get rid of them because they have the majority, and that they may very well get rid of him as Deputy Chief Secretary because the THA law prevents him from taking the Chief Secretary position. And I would take Mr. Hotroy Charles' word on this. He was a former Chief Secretary himself. He has been around Tobago politics for ages, longer than I've been alive. So he has been here. He has been there. And he is saying that this wasn't based on anything to do with this whole... This has nothing to do with anything to do with the America trip. It was always a power struggle. Hey, 868TT, what's up, bro? Mr. Farley went into this also. I'm looking to see if I can see that, because Farley was basically outlining the same thing. He was saying that if you look at this, it doesn't make sense that he's angry about this American trip. This isn't something to do with the American trip. He's upset about something else, and that's where this whole thing flared up from. And in all of this upsetting, Mr. Duke accused Mr. Farley of engaging in corruption. There were accusations that Mr. Farley was only giving contracts to local Trinidad contractors. And the funny thing in that is that quite a bit of hullabaloo, quite a bit of bacchanal was made when the PDP was vying for power about the PNM using Trinidad contractors only and not giving the jobs to the Tobagonians. They're giving it to their Trinidadian friends and robbing Tobago of the resources and and that was part of the campaign trail. But strange enough now, Augustine defends 309 million infrastructure contracts. Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance, Trade and Economy Farley Augustine, THA Chief Secretary, has admitted million-dollar contracts were awarded to Trinidad contractors. At a media conference last Friday, this is an article with some age. This article is from 2 weeks ago. At a media conference last Friday, PNM Tobago Council leader and former Chief Secretary Ansel Dennis produced documents and accused Augustine of hypocrisy. He claimed the PDP administration had approved $309 million to Trinidad contractors in 1 month for infrastructural work, recalling that the PDP administration sold the people of Tobago a mandate on a platform that involved putting Tobago first. Actual factual. PDP went in there saying that the PNM is a Trinidad party and they're taking the Tobago resources and sending it to the Trinidadians. Well, PDP came in and what would you know? Trinidad contractors still get the job. Yes. One of your comments were blocked, Roni. They're telling me they filtered some comments to protect the community's experience. What did your comment have in it that you made them auto-filter it, Roni? What were you trying to say there in the comments? Augustine responded the Tobago updates on the Tobago Updates morning show on Monday, there is little validity in what he presented about one of the documents being valid. But I assure you that no one was sole selected. He said in the case of these contracts, the executive gave the division, and rightfully so, the authority to use its procurement mechanism, project managers, along with its technical expertise to determine the fastest way to get the contracts done. I assure you, this is Mr. Augustine speaking. The division did not use a sole select mechanism to get the contracts done. In fact, I am advised that 40 contractors were evaluated. That was then brought down to 7. 3 were then selected. He said these contracts are design, build, and finance. The THA is not paying these contractors up front. In fact, the THA would not be paying these contractors until 9 months after completion. 9 months after a proper certificate of completion is done. In other words, those that would have to do these contracts would have to have capacity, will have to have the skill set and expertise, would have to have the finance upfront 100%, will have to have the ability to wait 9+ months to be paid, 18 months in this case, 9 to 18 months in this case. So, yeah, you could say many things. I'm not blocking any of the comments, 868. You could say anything. I'm not. If the comments block, that's on TikTok. They're auto doing that. I have no control over what they're doing. I would like to take that off. I have administrators to check the comments if they're getting too bad. Well, Roni says it. Well, that means he's taking all small contractors out the race. Exactly. He is saying this and making it seem as if it's not his fault that the Trinidad contractors are getting the contracts. The Trinidadian contractors just have more resources. They are just able to do more. Well, yes, they are. That is kind of the problem, isn't it? That's the very same thing, for example, that Guyana is trying to guard against. If they leave it open for anybody in the world, then the biggest companies all over the world are going to come in and take everything away. The idea that the PDP came in there with is that they were going to do something differently to allow for the local Tobago contractors to get benefits from this. If you do the contracts in the design, build, and finance, where someone has to pay out of their own pocket for the contract and wait a year and a half before they could get paid for it, then you are self-selecting certain people already. You are selecting out certain people. Small contractors know that you have no place even asking about this. And this has created some serious problems. A carnival bacchanal has broken out in Tobago. This article is from the 10th, right Monday there. The PTA, the Parent Teachers Association of the Scarborough RC School, was yesterday up in arms with the Tobago House of Assembly's Division of Education over the breaking down of a fence on the school's compound to make way for a road for the island's first carnival to be held from October 28th to 30th. What is also disturbing to PTA President Keisha Jack is that no consultation took place with school officials, and now parking space on the school's compound has been reduced as a result. There was absolutely no consultation. As a matter of fact, we were astonished upon discovering that the work had commenced on Saturday. School administrators, the members of the board, teachers, parents, no one was consulted, Jack said. She said teachers visited the school compound over the weekend to observe the changes made and also contacted the THA's THA's Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, Trevor James, on the matter. So a couple of the teachers who also visited the school contacted the secretary and inquired as to what was happening. Mr. James indicated to those persons that the school had no option where the project was concerned. We had no say because the school is located on state lands. The very same things that the PDP was angry with the PNM about, They are doing the very same thing. The PDP was talking about the PNM is dictatorial. They don't consult the people of Tobago. They just do things on their own whim and fancy without consultation. We are going to do things differently. We are party of the people. When we get into power, we will do nothing without the people's permission. A contractor from Trinidad is conducting the work. So, no consultation. They're breaking down your school fence to build a road for Carnival without consulting you. And just by the way, it's a Trinidad contractor doing it. Yeah. That's why very often when I hear people so regularly talk about change and let's get this one and let's get that one and let's give this one a chance and let's give that one a chance, I am not as hopeful as many people about giving a chance and that this other person, this other group is going to be so much better. Because so often we see it. We see it so often. Many people don't have a problem with oppression. They don't have a problem with abuse from the government leaders. They have a problem that they aren't the ones doing the oppressing. They don't have a problem with the government stealing as long as they're the ones stealing. It's not a problem with theft they have. They have a problem that they aren't benefiting from it. And the moment they get into that place, they do a lot of the same things. You see, running a country in a democratic way is a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing. To run a country where you're always waiting on the people's permission to do things, that's not easy. You won't get much done. And if you are someone who wants to get plenty done, you're going to end up leaving out getting the people's opinion and things. It's a kind of balance that you have to work out. Then they say the PTA president put a statement saying all is well by Monday morning. I'm not sure what you're saying there, to be very honest. I'm not sure what you're explaining there. All right, folks. That's all I have for now on this Wednesday evening, this Tobago Wednesday. Are there any further comments or questions before we dive out? Any further questions or comments before we dive out? Let's see anything over there on YouTube. Any questions over there? All right. Good. The president say all is well at school in time for the school open on Monday. Well, they weren't complaining about the school itself. They were complaining about the parking. The parking itself. Can I answer what Mr. 868 TC? Almost all I saw from you was to tell him with a 4-word sentence. You were playing pool. Of course you were. Yes, it was fixed positive radiation, but their problem wasn't it whether it was fixed or not. The size of their car park has now been reduced. Well then, sir, that's not a question. Tell him, but that isn't a question, that's a statement. Do you want me to read it? Is that what you want me to read? And well, no. If that's the case, no. You know, I don't particularly. What's the question you have, Nisi? What's the question you have? I don't particularly like things like that, you know, the tell him but, etc. Like, I find it's a bit too crass. Like, I don't mind political picong and poking fun at the opposing side, but to tell him cuss insult, like, I don't even find that's very creative. Like, it's not something like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Okay, maybe the first time you said it, the shock value was there, but after a while, it's just not, to me, it's just not going to work. And it isn't going to sway more people against the government or for any other political side. Like, I the crass side is really my flavor. Would you vote for a politician who never made a promise to the population? I might. I might, according to who the politician is. I might prefer such a politician if he's honest, or she is honest about what they can do, and they aren't making a promise about something that they cannot do. They're just saying, okay, I can do this and I might be able to do that, and this might be possible. They're not making empty promises. Well, yeah, I might actually vote for that. Nisi, I haven't seen the question you have yet. What's your question, Nisi? A manifesto is a promise. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's according to what is in the manifesto. Can you elaborate on what are the effects of a contract fronting the money and waiting 9 months for payment? Well, the effects of that is that you would have to be a big contractor to do that. You would have to, first off, in order to even bid for such a contract, they would have to see that you have an account with enough money in it to do the contract and to hold up until the time that you would be paid. So very likely, if you don't have probably a $6 million capital sitting down there, you can't even apply for that contract. So you already limit the contractors that can even apply. And it's the entire thing. Now, over in Guyana, they were complaining about this, that many of the oil companies, what they were doing, they were bundling the contracts. And this seems to be kind of what they are doing in Tobago too. They're bundling the contracts because it is possible for them to split these up into smaller contracts that may be able to be awarded to smaller contractors that would be able to do them. But if you bundle the entire thing, into one whole massive contract, then you are limiting who would be able to do it. You know, just say that you want Mr. Sammy or Siriram or Kusals to do it, because they are the only ones who would be able to. A manifesto is a promise to implement a plan. Not necessarily a promise to implement a plan. It's an announcement. A manifesto is an announcement of my policies, and policies may not necessarily be plans. So if yes, there would be plans, but it's not necessarily a promise. I'm trying to think about the way I'm thinking about it as in not being a promise. So if I have a manifesto where my manifesto says that, according to the limitations of the office, my political ideology is to seek to reduce the amount of power given to the state, as long as they're in given to the state, the amount of power given to the state. That's my manifesto. That's not necessarily a promise of what I am going to do. It's an announcement of the way I see office. Tint laws in effect yet? I want to tint my glass dark like a salt week. I think tint laws are in effect, sir, but 9 months later with inflation, and what is the value of the contract? Well, Joel Sweet Guru, that's why those contracts very often are extremely lucrative. So if I am a big contractor, big enough, I'll say that, okay, giving me the $100 million 18 months down the road is irrelevant if I have a profit margin of 250% or something ridiculous. Then inflation be damned, I'll still make money. Now that wait long for money is something that licks people up, licks the smaller contractors up. There are some contractors still waiting for money from since 2015. So that waiting for money is a difficult thing. But for the larger contractors, that's not much of a problem for them. They aren't too worried about that. Enrique, me too. I would like to put on some dark tint on my vehicle, but I'm not in the police service. I always say that, You could be driving down the road and guess all the vehicles owned by the police. Look for the vehicle that is blacked out tint, and you're like, that's an officer. At taxpayers' cost, that the problem, no value for money. Very true, Joel. Very true. I don't deny that. How can we ensure we get quality work from Tobagonian contractors? Well, contracts are supposed to have all of this in it. You know? They are supposed to be quality assurance surveyors. They are supposed to be project managers that are supposed to be there to ensure that these things are done. These aren't some new rocket science things. We aren't now figuring out how to do contracts. Contracts are supposed to have all of these things inside of it, but who is the lesser of two evils, UNC or PNM? Well, that would be the question, wouldn't it? I don't think I'd like to necessarily answer like that. I would attempt more to show people what might be the evils of them and let people choose such a thing for themselves. Choose such a thing for themselves. The thing is, I believe, the part I do believe is I do believe that you can choose between them. Many people say that they are the same thing. I don't actually agree with that. I don't believe you could have two different groups of humans and the two groups are exactly the same thing. They aren't exactly the same thing. They're different. And you can choose between them. Which choice is up to you? Do you agree with Tobago's budgetary allocation? I don't know. I don't know. In the grand scheme, I think maybe Tobago should be seeking to decrease the amount of money they need from Trinidad and make more money on their own. I find it really strange that Tobago makes $200 million and demands $4 billion every year. That just doesn't seem like a sustainable governance plan to me. It really doesn't. Strange. And this PDP government, I liked hearing this from Farley when they weren't in power. He was talking about this. He was talking about the fact that Tobago needs to increase the amount of revenue they make. And they need to decrease the amount of money that the government has to pay. But strangely enough, the PDP comes into power and they decide to increase the amount of workers employed by the state. They're just... everything is the state now. More projects by the state, more employment by the state, everything is the state. So, is secession the right thing for Tobago? Tobago cannot secede. They would not function well if they secede. If they secede, Tobago doesn't make enough money to secede. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained. That's all I have for now. I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live session tomorrow evening around 9:15 p.m. I will see you guys then. Peace out. If Tobago were to break off from Trinidad, would there be concerns for platforms in Tobago waters? Some people talk about it. I don't think there would be such concerns. I think Tobago would not be able to function if they broke off from Trinidad. That's just the fact. We are a twin. There's no separating us. We're together.